I have the keys to a 1987 Porsche 924S and a 1988 Porsche 924S. I'm going to drive them and give you my impressions. One thing to know about both these cars is that this 87 924S has a 3-speed automatic transmission, which we'll be comparing to a 5-speed manual transmission in this 924S, the 88. So let's get in, drive both these cars, and I'll give you my impressions.
Be sure to log into your YouTube account, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a video.
The original 924 was Porsche's entry-level sports car of the late 1970s, arriving after the death of the 914 and 912E. Volkswagen and Porsche shared development of the small, lightweight sports car with an Audi-sourced 4-cylinder engine, yet VW backed out of the deal at the 11th hour, much like it did with the previous 914. The 924 therefore was sold only as a Porsche, becoming the automaker's bread and butter through the late 70s and early 80s. The 924S was launched for the 1987 model year, 5 years after the original 924 was dropped from the North American market. An evolution of the 924, it once again became Porsche's entry-level car, slotting in below the 944. Because of its VW roots and not a 6-cylinder engine, the 924S was not as well liked as the 911 amongst Porsche enthusiasts. It was offered with a 5-speed manual transmission or a 3-speed automatic, and this 924S has the automatic. They generally command less money than a comparable car with a manual transmission, but just like any Porsche, it is not cheap to repair and maintain, as the owner of this car found out. Bought off a popular automotive auction website for just $4,500 in 2020, the current owner says the car was not in the condition as described by the seller, and it has taken about $20,000 to have a shop get it to its current condition. Buyer beware. For those wondering, this car's MSRP new was $23,910, but it sold for $20,802, an early indication of the tough times Porsche would face in coming years. This 1988 924S, on the other hand, was in a much better condition when the current owner bought it 2.5 years ago. He paid more for it, $9,600, but the car matched the for sale ad's description and didn't need a lot of work. I would be surprised to find many 1988 manual 924s or even a 1987 manual model in this condition for less than $10,000 nowadays, but great deals do pop up occasionally. This 88 924S's MSRP was $26,560 when new, but the original buyer was invoiced for $23,079. Though the 924S is a continuation of the original 924, it arguably has more in common with the 944. The narrower body and the pre-1985.5 dashboard are different, but anything mechanical is the same. And now, on to the drive, where we'll compare these two Porsches and give our ratings, as well as compare and contrast stock versus light suspension mods, as well as manual versus automatic.
All right. Porsche 924S. This is the first time I've driven a 924S. I used to own a 944S too, but never driven one of these. I've also never driven an automatic 924S or an automatic 944 for that matter. What we have here is a 3-speed automatic transmission, and even though this is an 87 model, it has the older early style 924 dash, which went out of production in mid-1985 model year. This was one of the ways that Porsche differentiated the 924S from the more expensive 944. So this car, the owner bought a couple years ago for his son to drive, who at the time didn't know how to drive stick, so he got a 3-speed auto. That son did not feel like driving this once he got his license, so the owner still has this in addition to a 996 as well. The owner likes to say, as I mentioned earlier, that this car is below stock. He just means that it's very, very stock. There's nothing been done with it. All right, and starts right up. And the first thing I noticed in these cars is the tachometer actually starts, instead of on the left and going up, it starts down and then goes up this way. So the bottom half of the tach. It feels really weird being in a 924S and not having a manual transmission, since, you know, these autos just, you don't see them all that often, I feel like. So we're gonna shift into drive. There we go. Handbrake is on the left side, put that one down. So first thing I notice is that the 924S steering wheel sits pretty low, and I remember this is one of those things that my 944 had. It was a low steering wheel and you can't raise it up and you can't telescope it. So what you have is what you get. So being a stock 924S, it has a very nice supple ride, which with an automatic transmission perfectly suits this car. The exhaust is a little bit louder than I remember in my own 924S2 when I drove it. Very smooth shifts in the automatic, it just downshifted a little bit. On the brakes, nice brakes. Then it upshifts when you're on the brakes a little bit, you know, off the gas. Really nice, light, not really light steering, but light with feeling, just enough heft to feel what's happening on the road. Not quite as laser precise as, let's say, a newer Porsche, or as feelsome as a 911 with non-power steering, but very nice nonetheless. The steering rim is a little bit thin. Some people might not like that, but after the whole fat rim trend, you know, from a few years back, I kind of appreciate a nice dainty little rim, especially on a car that weighs a little over 2,700 pounds. So I haven't gotten on the gas all the way yet. I've just been going part throttle most of the way here. And I'm actually enjoying myself, even with this automatic transmission on this back road, at about 4/10 pace, maybe 5/10. So here is our turnaround point. And something I can say is because the 924S has smaller fenders that the 924 had, it feels like a slightly smaller car because you don't see those flares when you're looking out over the hood. So it's a little bit easier to place maybe on a road like this. Now I'm gonna get onto the full throttle pretty soon here as the road straightens out. But for now, I'm just enjoying cruising down this road. If I had to give the 924S sort of a character or personality, it's a cruiser. And there we go. Got to just under 5,000 RPM. This car goes to roughly 6,500 RPM, red line. But with 3 speeds, you have really long gears, and it'll be tough to get up to that red line, even if you're trying for it pretty hard. You need a little bit more open road, a little more space. Yeah, so my overall impressions actually are, this is the kind of 944 that maybe you would daily drive. Crazy enough. They're not all that desirable, the automatics, so they go for less money, but they still have that Porsche feeling, you know, that built like a tank feeling that all Porsches have, even the 924. The steering's nice, and the automatic transmission performs a lot better and is more responsive and more predictable than a lot of the 8-9 speed automatic transmissions that you drive nowadays they're shifting all the time, I feel like. This one, you have 3 speeds, you pull away in 1 gear, you know, you have 2nd gear, and then you have your top gear. Thank you. Yeah, we just had somebody shout out, "Nice car, man," and you know, right now I wish this car were mine, but all right. So the drive is almost done, and I'm pleasantly surprised at how much I enjoy this automatic. Right off the bat, this is not something that I would probably buy as my only Porsche, but you know, for a second Porsche that maybe doesn't cost all that much and you can have some fun fixing it in the garage, modifying it, doing whatever you might want to do, this is a really nice car. So here we go. Here's my ratings for this car. So car show. 924S is not super common anymore, not like about what you would see him 10 years ago. And I also don't think the automatic transmission in the 924S's case does it any favors. most people are looking towards the 5-speed manual as the desirable transmission here. But it's guards red, pretty standard color, so it stands out even though a lot of 924s and 944s came in this color. Yeah, people like seeing this. It's not gonna score super high because, I mean, you see them enough and it's automatic, but man, let's see. I'll give this a, because they're becoming rare, I'm gonna be a little bit friendly with this car, and I'm gonna call this a 6.75 out of 10 for car show. Maybe it would have scored a little bit more had it been a little flashier like the other 924S we're gonna drive, or if it had the 5-speed manual. But I think 6.75 for an older 924 that's a really common Porsche in the big scheme of things, I think that's a fair score. Daily driving. I'm gonna take into account for the daily driving score how common the 924, 944 series is, how it isn't quite, especially if you get an automatic car, isn't quite the desirable 924S that people are looking for. I think you could daily drive this and not feel too sorry about it because it's an automatic, and because it's an automatic, and a really good one at that, it would be a really pleasant, easy to live with daily driver. The steering's great. I believe it gets pretty good gas mileage in the 20s when you're on the highway, but don't quote me on that. The seats are really comfortable. I've always thought that 944 seats are always really comfortable, and the same goes in the 924S. I'm gonna give this a somewhat high score for daily driving because of how comfortable and easy and guilt-free it is to daily drive, in addition to having tons of room in the hatch and the back seats. I'm gonna give this an 8.5 for daily driving. This car would do really, really well on the daily commute. For road trip, man, for some reason I almost think this should score about the same for road trip, if not a little bit less. I feel like this is more of a point-to-point car staying around town than a road trip car. But knowing that I've taken road trips in my old 944S2, and it was a great car at that, why would this be any different? So I'm also going to give this an 8.5 for road trip. Now for fun factor, this is where this car maybe suffers a bit. It's fun in the sense you can get in, have a good time, and it's a pleasant drive, a pleasant cruiser, but this is not a car you're gonna get in to drive hard on your favorite back road. It'll be competent at that, but it's not gonna give you the off-throttle response of a manual transmission, and the long gearing of the 3-speed means that you're never gonna quite be able to get up on the boil and really be carrying a lot of speed. That being said, very comfortable, pleasant cruiser, maybe a good Sunday drive, or a car to have fun with your teenage kid who is learning to drive, and maybe you want to put him in the Porsche. So for fun factor, I'm going to give this car a 7.25. It's a fun car, more fun than I expected. Going into this review, I was almost expecting that, man, I bet the best that this car could do is a 6.5 or 6.75, but it's not. It's better than that. That is the end of my 1 mile review for this car. We're about to hop into the 1988 924S, which is a 5-speed manual, has some suspension mods, and has a little bit more horsepower being a 1988 model. This is 1 model year newer, but basically everything else is the same on this car as the 1987 924S. The big difference being is that for 1988, for the 924S, as well as the 944, there was a horsepower bump from 150 to 160. So the 1988 model year is actually the one to get if you can find one. They're a little bit rare, but that little bit of get up and go is quite nice for a car that weighs a little over 2,700 pounds. So things that I notice here are that the owner has done some nice carpeting. It's a little bit custom, nice and flashy, but fits the car nice. Just like the other 924S, he has the Porsche script seats, which I love. Tachometer starts in a little bit different location, actually. It's funny, I wonder if the numbers are a little bit different, automatic to manual. And you have yourself a regular 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with reverse down and to the right. Now, Let's start this car up. Very nice. So this car has, as I said, a Dansk muffler, and it also has been lowered a little bit with some special Bilstein shock absorbers, and has 250-pound front springs and 27mm rear torsion bars. Now on my own 944S2, I was running 300-pound front springs and 28mm rear torsion bars. So this should be a little bit more forgiving on the road than my car was. And my car wasn't too bad. Really positive shift engagement. I want to say it's more positive than in other 944s. A little less rubbery. Still has a little bit of that rubbery feel, but overall very nice. Now, let's see, pulling away. Got to get the parking brake off. The clutch has a high bite point, so not as easy to pull away in this as in some other cars, but once we get going, it should be just fine. Very similar driving car to the other one so far. You can definitely tell it's a little bit stiffer. I personally like having stiff cars. I like that sporty feeling. Whew. Wow, that's nice. That corner felt really good, and I love the size of this car. Good amount of get up and go. Heel towing is not too bad. I didn't rev it enough, but the pedal placement's pretty good. Yeah, very, very nice. You can immediately tell that this car has better body control than the stock 924S we just drove, but it's not super stiff. It's like a happy medium between sporty and comfort in this car. Gearing is a lot shorter with this 5-speed manual. Really long throttle pedal, but that just means that you're able to really dial in exactly how much throttle you want. The steering, very nice. I feel like with the stiffer suspension, it's a little bit tighter than in the 924S that we just drove. I know for a fact that the owner of this 924S autocrosses it, so he's probably even set up the car a little bit for sportier driving, and it really shows. Really a big fan of the suspension setup. Aside from my own S2 from a while back, suspension-wise, this might be my favorite 944, 924S model that I've driven. Now we got somebody in front of us here, so I'm just gonna drive a little bit slowly as we catch up, or let that guy get in front of us a little bit. I'll go a little bit here. Oh yeah, real nice. The brakes have a nice firm feeling, a little bit better than 924S. Really nice and willing engine. Wow, this guy is not on his side of the road. Wow. Yeah, this is really a nice car. This is probably my favorite 924S/944 that I've driven since my old S2 again. But I love how the rear end loads up, especially coming out of a turn. And it's one reason why I love 944s, is that when you get it just right, the rear end squats a bit, and it doesn't feel rear engine like a 911, but it has that feeling that the rear end is working with you. And that's a really good feeling when you're driving hard. The only thing I don't really care for about this car is the really high clutch engagement. However, most 944s I've driven, including my own, had a really high clutch engagement. I would rather have something that's a little more in the middle, but it's a small nitpick that you would get used to, and it's not a bad clutch, still easy to modulate, just it's a little bit odd hopping from one car to the other and then into this one, and it's a lot different from what you might expect. Yeah, it's a quicker car than you would expect with 160 horsepower, but you gotta remember it weighs about 2,700 something pounds, so not a lot of weight to push around. Overall, a very pleasant drive. Now, I'm already brewing a little bit into what the ratings might be for this car, because it'll be a little bit different from the other 924 we just drove. All right, so 88 924S. Really love this car. It just goes to show that it's a car that I really wanted to buy this before I bought my own Cayman back in the day, and but I just ended up getting a Cayman. It just worked out that way. But what I'm realizing is if I had gotten a 924S, especially an 88 model, I would have been really happy to be driving that car, as I know the owner of this car is. Really superb example. So here are my ratings. Car show. This is a really nice car. As I said with the other one, it's Guards Red. It's a 924S. They're not super common, but they were very common back in the day. Maybe the herd has thinned over the years. You don't see them a ton, but they're still not uncommon. So I'm gonna give it a 7.75. All right, so now on to the daily driving score. So I gave the other 924S an 8.5, and that's partly because it's an automatic. You can just hop in it and go. You don't have to really care too much about it. The resale value is not going to be near what a 5-speed manual, especially an 88 924S would be. So it really is sort of the kind of Porsche you can hop in and drive and not really care about too much. Sort of like the beater Porsche, even though that 924S is very nice. This car, you might feel a little more guilt if you daily drove this because of how rare an 88S is with the 5-speed manual. So I'm going to give this an 8. 8 for this 88 924S. For road trip, I'm going to give it an 8.5. That's the same as the other 924S automatic. If you can drive stick, this has all the same attributes. And on a road trip, you know, you're not going to be in a position to get door dings, you know, like on your daily commute, parking at the store or wherever. So I think 8.5 is a fair score for that. For fun factor, this will score higher, and it's partly because of this 5-speed manual. It's just a more engaging, peppier car to drive. And with the suspension setup, with these Bilstein shocks and 27 millimeter rotortion bars and the 250-pound front springs, it maintains a very stock-like feeling, but it is definitely stiffer than stock when you drive them back to back. And so you have that really nice compromise between a cruising suspension where you can be comfortable and one where you can attack a back road. And this is a car you can really attack a back road in. It has enough get up and go to get the rear end into play, and it just really works with you and rewards your driving. So I'm gonna give this an 8 out of 10 for fun factor. Yeah, and really enjoyed my drive in these two very similar yet slightly different 924Ss. Thank you to the owners so much. And if you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel if you like content like this so you don't miss a video, and until next time.